This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for the Intentionality Gurus with Candace, Pollock. And I think today's subject is going to be helpful for many. It's extremely helpful for me, and it's called How the Brain Forms and Predicts Our Emotions. And as I was saying to Candace right before we got started, I've always thought of my brain as being a reactive brain. And I'm not quite sure why that has been for me. But yesterday I found that I stopped reacting and I took that pause, and then I became more proactive in what I wanted to say and do. So I can't wait to learn about the science about this, because obviously we all possess it.
Yeah, it's part of our natural bodily function, and we have a lot of new territory we're constantly exploring with neuroplasticity, which is, I just totally love that. If I had known about that when I was coming up through high school and college, declaring a major, even though I tended to do better in the English and those kinds of things, liberal arts, than sciences, I think I would have, wanted to study to be a neuroplastician. So anyway, a lot of what we know is being refined and replaced and so on. So this is the second part in the series of the mind-body connection. And last time we talked about some of the neuroscience and so on. And we're going to talk about more of that now. And so you're familiar with emotional intelligence?
Yes.
All right. And so the concept there was that based on the science that was known at the time, that we have certain parts in our brain that can hijack us emotionally. And but we can cultivate an intelligence, a form of insight and intelligence, kind of what you just described, that would help us be more self-aware, like when we're caught up in a situation or the kinds of situations we get caught up in, how we can moderate some of those feelings that are coming at us. And the idea is we can then make some of the conscious choices or less reactive choices, because it isn't always going to happen on a conscious basis. And so today we're going to talk about some of the new stuff that somewhat undermines that prior stuff we thought we knew. It adds to it. So we're going to actually be adding new track here and so on. And so this is a fascinating thing in terms of our body has learned how to predict how we're going to react. All right. So what occurs to you when you hear me say that?
It's what I'm hearing you say is something that I can feel my body doing. It's like when something happens, like a loud noise, okay, depending on what loud noises we've heard in the past, our body is going to react, even though our brain might be saying, oh, you're okay. Like I heard fireworks the other day when I was driving down in my car, middle of the day. And my first reaction was, maybe there's a shooting going on around me. And I sort of like swerved over in my car. I thought I was, like protecting myself until I connected with, I am okay. And then I continued going down the road.
Yeah, I love that. It's a perfect example. Or I live in an old house, and when it rains, sometimes little creatures from outside like to get in, like the little mouse kind. And I have some cats, so they must be on a suicidal mission or something. I don't know what, or a high quotient of dare. But anyway, one of the cats jumped up. I happened to be sitting in bed reading and jumped up on the bed with a little tail, wiggly tail out coming out of its mouth.
Oh,
All I did was scream, scream, scream. And when my husband was alive, he would say, like, I don't understand why you scream, like after the first scream, yeah, the startle, like, why would you respond that way? And I can't, it's something primal
yeah,
on
yeah.
my part. So anyway, I was able to, apparently, I don't like the idea of them killing creatures, and I don't like the idea of mice in the house, but I'd prefer to put the mouse outside, and I certainly have done my share of that. So anyway, I don't know what happened to that mouse. I know he didn't get eaten, at least not at that moment, because the cat was so scared by my screaming that he dropped it and it ran to safety. So the point of the story is, and it's just a fascinating thing. So there's new studies coming on the horizon. And because we have the functional MRIs that are more like videos rather than the snapshots, we can see which parts of the brain light up when they, simulate some of these things, not the mouse or the hearing the gunshots. But your example is a perfect example of you immediately went into some kind of protective mode. And the reason is, over time, your body, your culture, your experience has learned that certain sounds, smells, words, and so on could be threats.
Right.
All right. And your body's reacting on a subliminal level that you're not even consciously aware of. And it's forming a context for what this might be. And that's what we're reacting to. Okay, so what shows up for you when I say that?
Well, exactly. When I heard the sounds, because I didn't see anything, and it was daytime, I wasn't expecting it to be fireworks. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always hearing on the news about, drive-by shootings, and I'm in the car. So my first reaction was, there's somebody out there shooting. And so my, was like, I don't know why I thought pulling off to the side of the road was going to save me. Because truthfully, if there was a shooter in the area, I was going to be prime target. But that was my brain was saying, go save yourself, pull over. But it was all done in split seconds because, it's not like I stopped on the side of the road and waited there, minutes or longer. It just like I pulled over, sort of looked around, realized I was okay, and then I kept going.
Yeah, and that just illustrates so nicely the idea that, there wasn't time for real conscious thought where we do have that fork in the road and we can say, okay, this could be danger or not. And but the body was doing what the body, was designed to do. And it's designed to keep us safe and help us perpetuate the species, to stay alive. And so on. It's its primary objective. The rest is, just add on, so to speak, in terms of, our experience. But all of it is designed to keep us alive. And if there's any hint of a threat, we just go into that automatic mode. Well, the thing the science is showing is that before we even have the perception or the experience, we've already processed it in a sensory way. And based on our past experiences and, our ideas about certain things, like if we grow up in an urban area, so for instance, where I grew up in New York, we were way out in the boonies. And if we heard gunshots or a sound of a gunshot, it wasn't likely to be fireworks unless it was a holiday, because, we just didn't have that kind of density of population.
Right.
And maybe somebody would be firing off a firework, but and it probably wouldn't be a backfiring car because we were all spread out from each other. We weren't on top of each other. And then finally, the only time we would hear gunshots is when it was hunting season and people would come up on the mountain where we lived, and people from New York City and go hunting, but they weren't near us. It would be a distant gunshot. All right. And if it was near us, yeah, that would spook us because they had to be trespassing. So the point of the story is my experience wouldn't necessarily be your experience, which might have been more urban. Follow me?
You're right.
And so, we hear, and I'm not condoning or being critical of anything, but we hear about how, police sometimes shoot first and,
Right.
parse the questions later. Certain, profiles may be a factor, et cetera, et cetera. Well, some of this is just the way we're hardwired and soft-wired as humans. And I'm not making excuses for it, but it is an explanation. So the studies have shown that in terms of how much we predict, I'm going to just do a colossally bad job of explaining this. And for any real science nerds out there, this is not for science nerds. It's not to standard probably. The idea is that they were able to discern in replicated tests again and again that in the nanoseconds prior to the perception of the experience, the senses that the body had been picking up, not even on a conscious level, had predicted what the likely scenario was. And then we had our experience. So those body sensations are coloring our experience somewhat. And then our perceptions, and that's going to be dictated somewhat by our past experiences, like I just described, where I grew up, we wouldn't think it was shooting unless it was hunting season that was only in the fall. And so the idea is that our body has already predicted what it's likely to be. So it becomes the thing that dictates our experience in many ways. So I don't know how that lands for you.
Yeah. So, we hear a lot that we're a product of our experience, of our culture. And, I'll give another example. When I was flying to and from Texas, I've never felt like I was in the minority in the past, but at the airport, I truly felt like I was in the minority. And because of a lot of my urban upbringing, I was just very, very aware of all the people around me and me feeling like the odd one out. And I was more careful of everything that I was doing. I wasn't as verbal as I may have been in a situation where I didn't feel like the odd one out, like I was different from everybody. So I felt like I had to protect myself, which was sort of silly because I was just amongst people, but I wasn't used to being, the one who was sitting in the back of the bus, so to speak.
Yeah, and it wasn't safe. It wasn't threatening, but it wasn't safe either. So you had to be cautious.
Exactly. And I remember when I got off the plane in Texas and got in my son's car, I started to relate this to him and I said, this is so silly. Why did I feel that way? And he said, because this is how, we treated people. So you expected to be treated that way. And when I thought about it, it was like, that is part of my past culture.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, it explains a lot of things. It doesn't, excuse me. I swallowed the wrong way.
Yeah.
This reminds me of the first podcast where I was gagging off screen. So it doesn't necessarily justify the reactions and so on. But the other part that enters into it, we talked about it, but is that the brain actually has like a construct. It has, and they talk about this is cognitive, emotion construction that we're engaging in, that we're actually constructing the emotions in a sense. And it's based on what they call concepts. So our brain has learned to categorize everything. And in one program that I attended, they talked about it categorizes everything, including dogs and emotions. And it's picking up on the body sensations. Oh, I'm feeling like a little tense going on here. And, here I am anthropomorphizing our brain and how it operates as if it has a little voice. But basically the sensations are driving, and then the bodily sensations are saying, okay, what category of feeling is this? Is this something that feels like a physical threat, emotional threat, or is this like something of ease and flow that we want to embrace more of, and so on? What have I experienced in the past bodily sensation wise that tells me whether this is like that? So one of the things that we can be thinking about is cultivating more of the calm approach to things, so that as challenges arise, the kind of challenges that are not life-threatening, that we can handle them in a ease and flow way rather than a reactive way.
Okay.
All right. The other part is that a woman, Lisa Feldman Barrett, or it may be Barrett Feldman, I can't remember which sequence her name comes, but she wrote a book about the brain, and she's one of the four, the people who forwarded this science area. Basically was telling us that we have a body budget, and it is our mood at any given time during the day, which will fluctuate. Our energy, did we get good sleep last night? Did we, nourish ourselves food wise well? Have we had upsets already, first thing in the morning? Or did we, do we have like a protocol that we do that sets us up for a good, experience of the day? And then that body budget is going to color some of our experience of the day. So it's something we can proactively track and notice, like, well, if I don't get enough sleep, then X tends to happen. Friday, I had a really, really difficult day trying to push forward something for my client. And the problem was that I couldn't get anybody on the phone, or who I got said, no, that's not our department. And they didn't know who I could talk to. The information I was given, it was just push, push, push. And I used to do that all the time in my old area of practice. I used to do it as a paralegal when I had my paralegal business, and it was fun. I loved it. But I had, been tired, and I just was running out of cope on Friday. And I got to the point where I thought I was going to cry. I was so frustrated. I just couldn't get somebody to be a human being. And I realized, you have to stop pushing. You can't do this. I just had to like give myself a breather.
Yeah.
All right. And that's not who I tend to know myself to be when I'm advocating for somebody. And so that wasn't something that came naturally to me. So what have you had like that, where you recognize that you're tapped out either emotionally and or physically, and it impacts how you're experiencing the day?
Well, one of the big things for me is that during the week, I have a very good exercise routine, and that really helps me because I do 2 30-minute workouts, one in the morning and one in the evening. And during that time, I'm not concentrating on anything else other than, I'm listening to music while I'm working out, or if I'm riding my stationary bike, I might be reading. But on the weekends, because my husband is home, my routine sort of changes, because during the week, he's out of the house by 7 o'clock. So I can exercise before I do my first podcast, so that I've got this energy and focus.
Mhm.
And then at night, I also do it about an hour or so before we go to bed. But usually that's the time when he goes in the office and he catches up on his personal email and stuff. So I have that separation, but on the weekend, for some reason, because he doesn't get up till a little bit later, I don't go into the room and ride the bike after he's gotten up. And I can feel myself dragging all day long, even though there are moments during the day that I could go ride the bike or I could go in there to exercise. I'm not doing it. And so I'm noticing that my weekends are very tough for me. And it should be the opposite way around. It should be the weekend where I can be relaxed, but I'm not.
Yeah, and in a way, we can think of the weekends as just letting it all hang loose and so on. But I think what you're saying kind of underscores the idea that structure isn't a bad thing, because it can support us in having that ease and flow experience on the weekend and
Right.
feeling true rejuvenation if we do certain things. I'm like you, that I like to have certain things out of the way, because and done, like certain exercise and so on in the morning, because I know over time that's what I need to have more cope. On
Right.
Friday I didn't have that for a couple of different reasons, and I was just running out of cope. And literally I said to one woman, I think I'm going to cry. I'm just so frustrated. And she did respond to me. I didn't do it to be manipulative, but it was just a statement of truth. Like I just, I got to take care of this. I can't have this guy evicted because of some bureaucratic snafu. And so if we can keep these things in mind, that it's that interplay between the body and the mind, that they're so tightly entwined, that we might give more support to the body part, to give more support for the thinking part, the brain part, and vice versa. And the brain from, a health perspective, are we getting enough sleep and nutrients and so on to have a healthy brain?
Yep. And that's also the difference. During the week, I'm more conscious of the amount of water I'm drinking, and eating the right things. On the weekend, and I said this to my husband yesterday. I said, I think I know why I've been feeling sick for the last 2 days. And he goes, why? I said, I don't think I had a full 8 ounces of water,
Yes,
and
hydration is so important.
yeah. And, you hear about these things and you don't, like during the day when I'm working, I have I can't see it, but I have my 32-ounce tumbler of water, which I refill 3, 4 times a day. And so that's Monday through Friday. But if I'm not doing it on the weekend, it's taking a lot out of me, and it changes the way I think and react. And like I was telling you that, yesterday I was trying to explain something to my husband, and I was feeling very angry about it. And then I sort of stopped myself. And if I think about it, I did have my tumbler of water, and I remember like gulping some of the water down before I started to relax. So, there's a lot of science there.
Yeah, and again, the beauty of it is that people are pushing the envelope on what these things mean. So the name of this woman, she's a psychologist, neuroscientist, researcher, is Lisa Feldman Barrett. That's the correct sequence of her multiple names. All right. And she wrote How Emotions Are Made, The Secret Life of the Brain. And in essence, she's basically saying the science of emotion is going through a revolution, and there's a big shift, the paradigm shift. And we used to think of emotions as being somewhat universal, that most humans handle things in a certain way, and some of that's still true. But now we're recognizing how specific our particular mix or recipe of emotions was formed, because our cultural and our personal experience, did we grow up in an urban area, rural area, this education, that education, and so on, a loving household or a challenging household, blah, blah, blah. All of those things come into play and have helped, the body predict from its construct, from its perspective, its paradigm, and that body budget, what would be so for us. And those predictions can be correct, and those predictions can be flawed, and so on. So what would you suggest some takeaways for listeners might be, something they might do, or some takeaway they might have?
Well, I think it keeps going back to something that I talk about quite a bit, and it's trying to be mindful of what you're feeling internally, as well as, how you're reacting to it. And I wasn't truthfully as mindful about what I was going through this past weekend, but there were certain body functions that I started changing that were better for me. It was almost like my brain was telling my body, you can't react. Okay. Find a way to calm yourself down. And I think it's just being aware of the things that make us feel good and make us react in a better, positive manner, rather than just saying, oh, that's how I've always been.
Yeah. And more or less abdicating any sense of, I don't want to use the word control because it has a bad connotation, but ability to influence what's going down.
Yeah.
In essence. Love that. Love it.
I hear my husband always saying, well, I've always been like that. And it's like, but does it suit you?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And those are the things that, I've been changing. And sometimes I don't even realize I've changed it till after a while and go like, oh yeah. I think if I saw a mouse run across the floor, I'd be screaming and yelling, and I would run out the door.
Much less a creature coming towards you with one in its mouth, like, no, I don't want it.
Well, I wouldn't go back in the house until somebody exterminated my house. I'm not as calm as you are there. But I mean, when I think about it, it's like, okay, it's a little creature. Okay. I'm a bigger creature, but my body's still, and my mind still, I can tell you exactly what I would do. And
well, it was probably what I was doing, and my husband could never get his, he was very kind and patient, wise man, but he would always say, I don't understand why you react that way every time. Like, more or less like, when are you going to learn? It's like, I can't explain it either. It's just my body goes into whatever. It's not like I've had a bad experience with a mouse or anything. We grew up in the country. We saw them, a lot.
right.
It's just the way things are. They would, come into the garage in the winter months and go to nice warm little places.
Well,
So,
I had bad experiences with them, with mice. And I'm just gonna relate because some people will probably find it funny. We lived in a 2-story flat. We lived upstairs. The owner lived downstairs. And my brothers and I shared a bedroom, and we had a coal furnace. So that meant there was a coal chute. So that was always open. Okay. So the mice would come in that way. But I remember as a little girl, I slept in a crib till I was 5 because there was no other place for a bed other than a crib. And my mother would make me stay in the bed until she would run around the room and swat at the mice to get out of the bedroom.
Oh my God, that must be scary.
And my mother was never afraid of them. And she would always say to me, why are you so afraid? And was like,
it's something primal. Yep.
Exactly. So, that vision still sticks in my head when I even think about them. When you said, the cat had one in its mouth, it's like, oh my God, get away from me,
Well, my best experience of it was I happened to walk by the living room, and there was my big orange tabby looking down on something. They were smack dab in the middle of the living room that had like a wood floor. And I realized, oh my God, it's a little mouse staring back at the cat. And they were both just frozen. And so I quietly tiptoed into the room, and I had a thing that holds candles, a glass, see-through glass thing. And I took the candle out, and I put it over the mouse in front of the cat. The mouse didn't run. Everybody was just like totally still, like I had entered some kind of still life. And then I had something that I could put under it to then lift the glass thing. And I took it outside, and I placed it in the ivy, in a little clearing in the ivy. And I took the glass away, and the mouse just stayed there the whole time still. And then eventually he scampered off. But, the orange cat did nothing. It was like so bizarre, but it's like, what were you doing? You're in a house that has a couple of cats, and you have to be suicidal to enter this household. Like, just, I don't get it. How he was, got the reprieve was just pure dumb luck of me having to come down the stairs and look right into the living room. So,
Wow.
So that didn't scare me, but it's something about them maybe running on me. And I don't ever recall one ever running on me.
Well, let's hope it never happens. So
Exactly. But I'm predicting that that's how I would react if
I'm
it did
sure.
happen. All right.
Wow.
So that's part of how the body and the brain interact.
All right. And we'll continue this discussion as we move forward. So thank you,
Right.
Candace. Have a
So
great day. Bye-bye.
Good holiday. Bye-bye.